I'm excited to welcome you to the DisOrient Asian American Film Festival of Oregon. My name is Gordon Nagayama Hall, and I'm on the board of directors. And I'm pleased to introduce you to Tony Shyu, director of the feature documentary, The Race Epidemic, and Aronjonel Villaflor, director of the short narrative For Your Convenience. And both of these films deal with anti-Asian discrimination that spiked during the pandemic. And I realize some of you won't have watched the films when you listen to this Q&A, so we'll try not to have too many spoilers, but we're pleased and privileged to have these two filmmakers with us today for a Q&A. So The Race Epidemic is a feature documentary by Tony Shyu. And Tony, your film has extensive footage, historical footage, interviews with some prominent leaders, including Noam Chomsky, Judy Chu, Erica Lee, and others. I'm curious how you gained access to these materials and the people.
Well, our producer, Ron Wong, who is very active in politics, has many access to the politicians and educators and the people you see in the film. So we were lucky enough to have them, speak to us and, have us film them. And this goes back 3 years ago, actually, we started the process. So yeah, it's been a long process.
Thanks. And also just joining us is Will Kim, who is the director of the short documentary, Where Are You Really From? And will come to your film in a bit, but I want to move now to the short narrative For Your Convenience by Aronjonel Villaflor. And Aronjonel, your film addresses two viral threads, anti-maskers and Asian scapegoating for the coronavirus. And I'd like to ask you why you think COVID has become so politicized, and it seems like our country needs cooperation and unity more than ever, and yet we're as polarized as we've ever been. So thoughts about the politicization and polarization?
Personally, I just feel like in the United States, we've had a certain sense of like comfort. And I feel like with the pandemic, it kind of took that away and forced us to address something that like we never thought we would have to. And like people think that like a lot of the time, like when you see like confrontations with like anti-maskers, it's a lot about to do with like personal rights and like what does that mean, and what extent does that take when if you're not like vaccinated, or like if you're carrying a virus, like what extent that takes when you're like in contact with other people and you could be giving it to other people and you're not just affecting yourself, and like kind of taking away that comfort and just being forced to like be confronted with the news. Because I remember just during lockdown, it just felt like you're in this endless news cycle, and just like I don't think anybody's mental health improved. And I think just that combined with just everything going on, just I feel like everything kind of hit a boiling point, and that's why every little thing that we kind of take for granted in prior to the pandemic, it was kind of like we were stripped to our bare bones. So like that made people uncomfortable. And like just historically in the United States, like we always assign some kind of group to blame for certain things. So definitely like trying to make sure that like we're sorry, just lost my train of thought, but like, yeah, just definitely like the pandemic definitely just forced us to come to terms with like ourselves, and just seeing there was nowhere else to think and like look about than the pandemic itself. And that just caused a lot of drama between our communities.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's a good analysis. So Will, thanks for joining us. Your film is animated. It's a short documentary. Where are you really from? Uh, why did you choose animation as the medium for the film?
Oh yes. Hi everyone. So sorry I joined late. I'm out of town right now, but thank you for having me. That's I mean the main reason is because I'm an animator and I feel most comfortable telling a story or a concept through a medium of animation than anything else. Um, I don't know if that answers, but but if you're asking if why I chose the animation medium particularly to tell the type of story that I told, then the answer probably will remain the similar as what I just said, but also because I wanted to sort of freely explore different people saying different stuff in different perspectives, and I thought it would be fun to kind of illustrate it, as in like sometimes some people say stuff kind of as if we put stuff on the blank sheet of paper or a canvas, like out of blank, and so I thought, all in all, it would be appropriate to use the animated mediums for this film. I hope that answered your question.
It does, thanks. And your movie is called "Where Are You From?" And I think every person who's an Asian American knows exactly what you mean. And
Mhm.
I and you captured so much in those 2 minutes of what
Mhm.
psychologists call microaggressions.
Okay.
I'm wondering, why do you think people think it's their business to ask someone where they're from? So when I was, people don't
Yeah.
ask me this anymore because I'm older, but I used to be sitting on a bus when I was in my 30s or 20s, and people would, ask me that, just me, not anybody. So why do you think people feel free or emboldened to even ask the question?
Yeah, yeah, that's really interesting and important question, I think. I usually don't mind about the question of where are you from, but then what bothers me is where are you really from? That's what really bothers me, because everyone can be curious or wonder, what the person you're talking to is coming from, or whatever, but yeah, yeah, some people just have to have that mentality of like, if you don't I don't know, if you don't look black, white, or Hispanic, they just have to find out. It's like a searching game, guessing game. Like they just some kind of quiz. They just have to find out where you're really from. And so, that's a good question. But sometimes what I find out is sometimes the intention is not all that bad. It it's just sometimes the ignorance not always comes out of evil nature. Sometimes it's a lack of knowledge, and sometimes it's unconscious thing. But sometimes they just want to be friendly with you. They just want to some kind of excuse to or topic to talk to you about, and it happens to be that. I would probably say that if you're trying to be really forgiving about this kind of question, but yeah, that's actually a good question. I'm glad that you asked that question, and I'm glad that I'm still not able to answer your question because it's kind of a mystery at the same time.
Yeah, that's it. It is. I mean, that's as good of an answer as any. So moving back to Tony, whose feature documentary is the Race Epidemic. So there's different. I think there's different opinions on where we're headed as a society, and I think that some of the people in your film talk about a colorblind post-racial world. And I'm wondering if you think that is the goal, and if it is the goal, is it very realistic?
Well, that's that's a complicated question, actually. Um, but I just want to say something really quick about where you're from, actually, going back to where you, for me, when I think of when people ask that, they're not out of like evil or bad intention, but I think it's the perpetual foreigner sense that no matter how many generations that we've been here, is because this look, they don't feel like you are American. And that's why I think it's important. And we see progress with media now that putting Asian American on screen, that representing America, and that's very important. In terms of where we're going from here, I'm optimistic, because no matter how bad things are, I mean, I was looking at the film Schindler's List last night. You know, if we think we're having bad now, I mean, you go back to 1940s, you know, but things might seem really bad right now, but I feel like it's a progress. And I feel like without what's going on right now, the silver lining for what's going on right now is many Asians, younger Asians, before they didn't think there was that much racism going on. And the younger generation of Asian Americans, some of them didn't even know about a lot of the history that's in our film, like Vincent Chan, and a lot of the things that was happening. They never heard about it, actually. So the good thing, well, I don't think it's a good thing, but I guess the thing that came out of recent Asian hate incidents is that it made a lot of people care about what's going on. And even the people who felt like, you know, 2 or 3 years ago when we were making a film, they felt like, you know, that kind of thing will not happen. Now it's happening. And they realize they need to take action and they need to get involved. So I think more Asian Americans are getting involved, doesn't matter politically or socially. As long as we get involved, I feel like it's very positive when people are getting involved, because when people get involved, unite, that's power. And when we have power, then we progress and we move forward.
Thanks, Tony. So similar question to Aronjonel. Do you feel like we're progressing? Is there room for hope and optimism? Because your film, I think, really graphically gets at what could have been a real event of an anti-masker. And as I mentioned, we're polarized. But do you see us moving forward and making progress?
Oh yeah, I totally think that like just us having this conversation right now is already a sign of progress, and us being able to have filmmakers from our community being able to tell these stories. I think that's definitely a great move forward. I think as long as we continue to have these conversations, I don't know if there's ever going to be like some kind of utopia where everybody is like everything is perfect and how it's supposed to be. But I think the real utopia is like us being able and willing to continually improve upon the last generation, just continuing making sure that injustices are corrected wherever they can.
Yeah, thanks. It's good to hear optimism from both of you. So, Will, I wanted to, and maybe to all three of you, there's a satire video a few years back called "What Kind of Asian Are You?" And there's this Asian American woman jogger and a white jogger, and so this guy comes how this white guy asked this Asian woman, basically, where are you really from, and and so forth.
Yeah,
And so she kind of throws it back to me. Do you know the satire video, Will?
I think I might be. For me, I need a little more description. I mean, can you?
Yeah, so they're jogging. This woman, I think, is Korean, and he
Right.
asks her, where are you from, or what kind of Asian are
Mhm.
you? And she says she's,
Oh, and then she
the
asked
thing.
back where
Yeah, she
you're
says she's
from.
Korean, and he goes, "Oh yeah,
Mhm.
I thought it was either Japanese or Korean." And then
Oh
he
yeah,
starts
yeah, yeah,
talking about. He
yeah.
says he tries to speak in an Asian language and says he likes
Mhm.
teriyaki or something, which isn't
Right,
Korean. And
right,
then she
right,
kind of comes back
right.
at him and says, "Where are you from?" And then he says, "Well,
Oh,
what do you
yeah,
mean?"
yeah.
And so forth. So she kind of uh,
Right, right.
kind of mocks him.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. That's been or that video's been around quite a while, right?
It
Like I
has.
remember seeing it a while back. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but actually, so what I was going to ask you is, do you think there'll come a time where the assumption is that an Asian American, particularly one who's speaking English without an accent, is from the United States, rather than asking the person they're really from? So if they see, so I'm biracial, so when they see me, I think they always have questions. It's more like, "What are
Mhm.
you?" But do you think there'll ever come a time? And Asian Americans have been in the United States for centuries, but
Mhm.
will there come a time when the default is that the person is an American? Maybe this is happening in some places such as California, but I'm interested in your thoughts, Will, if uh, people will just assume that the person is from someplace in the United States, and where are you from means where do you live, or where were you born in the United States, rather than where were your ancestors from?
Right, right. I hope so. I hope that people will not be judgmental by by the look of the person when they ask such question. But I wouldn't know. But I'm also as equally optimistic because like the other directors prior to me have already said, I think the more representation of us is important, and that's why film festival like DisOrient and other Asian American festivals are so important because it represent our voice and our perspectives, and or help represent our perspectives. And the more I see people that make important decisions, that are of Asian or Pacific Islander descent, I see that their priority in making, because I work at academia, I teach at a college, and I often see that when the director of the library, for example, is an Asian American, their cultural events that they curate or they co-sponsor, or sometimes are centered around like things like the Asian. Like Asian oriented, like for example, like discovering the Chinese history or Chinatown in Riverside. Riverside is where I work, and so things like that, that would not have been on the list of the priority if the director of the library was not Asian. So things like that, and then I see more and more people being in charge of important, not just in the politics, but in academia, um, filmmaking, of course, and in a lot of different areas. At least people don't. I think it was till maybe a couple of years ago I stopped hearing about Jackie Chan comment, but now my students and people ask me like, oh, like, do you know BTS or Bong Joon-ho? I mean, that's better than being asked if I know how to do martial art. Um, but still, I think a long way to go. But I'm trying to be also as optimistic as everyone else. Tony and other, I'm sorry, I just joined. I should have known everyone's name. Yeah, I think so. I don't know. I think I kind of went around the question and I might not have given you the direct answer, but I hope that there will be a time when even Asians or Asian Americans or Asian immigrants with accents. I mean, I have accents myself too, maybe not too distinguished. Maybe they put people don't put the color lens, when they look at people of Asian or Asian American or the Pacific Islander descent, whether or not they think that they speak fluent English or not. Because sometimes that happens too, like if we can have Latin America or people from Latin American countries or European countries or from Africa, when their presence in the country is considered almost close to majority or have been raising more voices than Asian Americans, they don't automatically assume that they don't know American culture or they cannot speak English when they see a white person from Europe or Canada, or sure Canada, speak English, but or Africa or Latin America, and especially in California. But there's something about that's particular type of lenses that they put, when they look at Asian Americans. But things are improving, and I'm trying to be as optimistic, as possible too.
Thanks, Will. So I'm really heartened by hearing from each of you because your films are so hard hitting. And as the audience either has seen or will see, but it really is heartening to hear the optimism from each of you. So I'm going to wrap up by asking each of you what current projects you're working on. So we'll start with Tony.
Yeah, after this film, or we did some screening with this film, and everyone always says, okay, what's next? Your film talk about, history, and we understand there's all these things going on. What are you going to do about it? What's next move for us, for the viewers? What should we do? So I've been thinking about it, and then we came up with this idea that we have the first part of the film realizing there's a problem. The second part really is about talking about our contribution, Asian Americans' contribution to America. That means showing successful Asian Americans on screen, that they deserve more credit that they do in the current media, because they don't talk about it. Asian American has a lot of successful, they're successful business people, and they're successful Asian Americans athletes, as you see in Olympics, and they're successful Asian American entertainers. So we want to feature these part of Asian American to be positive. We're not just talking about all the negative racism and we're the victim. We don't want to be the victim. We are also the victor in this society, and we contribute to this society. And that's what this next film I'm doing is also a documentary, but it's about Asian American entrepreneur and their success in America, but not your typical, not what people think Asian American are just these accountants or doctors. They are in every part of different sector of America. So.
Thanks. That sounds great. And it shows how diverse Asian Americans are, and that, some people are counter stereotypical and are doing all kinds of things. So that sounds great. So Aronjonel, what are your current projects?
So just kind of taking like a lighter route, helping the person who was my producer on For Your Convenience. She's going to be directing a comedy short film, so kind of just a little change of pace, but also me and another filmmaker, his name is Jared Willis, who his film, I premiered his film at an event that we co-hosted, where his film dealt with like police brutality and like racism towards the African American community, and like our kind of collectives are, we're trying to like form kind of like this coalition to not only like highlight other artists' work from where we're from, like because there's not a huge filmmaking community in like the like southeast like Detroit area, but like trying to make sure that like we're all there to support each other, and we're trying to coordinate more events and like projects together in which we can highlight our work, but also try and give back to the community as well, and making sure that we're using our platform. So collaborating with them, and also making sure we're basically trying to create a huge network, kind of like almost like an anti-gatekeeping, like pro philanthropy, giving back type of initiative that we're trying to start right now here in Michigan. So that's kind of what we're working on right now. Trying to take a little bit of a step back from directing and writing and all that, because that was pretty draining. So trying to help other people get their stuff on the ground. But yeah, that's what we're working on right now. And hopefully that's what we're going to be working on for like the next few months or so.
Thanks, Aronjonel. So Will, what are your current projects?
Yes, so I am in the pre-production of another short documentary, animated documentary film, but this time on the about the climate. I'm sorry, the ocean warming caused by the impact of the climate change, and so the fish migrating up north, to escape from the warm weather. I know it's not a social justice topic or racial, but well, if you consider fish as a race. But anyways, so yeah, so it's kind of an environmental film, but something that I've been really wanting to do, because the impact of the climate change on because I have two kids, and they talk about it too, and then they're really aware of what's going on, and it's just kind of thinking about their my future, but also their future. So yes, so another short documentary animated film, but on a completely different type of subject. But I just finished working on the feature-length documentary film called Sincerely Los Angeles, the film about the artists and mural painters that have been painting Kobe Bryant and his legacy. It's coming up really soon. They're in the post-production, so I just finished working on that as one of the lead animators. But as far as my film directed by my name, I'm in the pre-production of that environmental documentary animation film. Hopefully, plan on finishing it by somewhere mid 2023.
Thanks, Will. And thank you all three panelists for spending time with the DisOrient audience and making films that teach us about AAPI history and experiences. And I encourage the audience to see these films if you haven't, and to follow the filmmakers and support their work. Make sure to rate all the films you see, because your favorite film could receive an Audience Choice Award. To the filmmakers here, continued success to all of you, and thank you.